Welcome back, everyone, to day two of the Bless God Summit. I just wanted to give a quick little recap to what we have already spoken about. The conference continues on later tonight I believe it's 7 o'clock. We get to see the first episode of season 5 of The Chosen. It's the special premiere. And then after that, at 8:30, we get to listen to the David Wood versus Alex O'Connor debate all about did Jesus claim to be God. I'm gonna just come back later tonight. It'll probably come through about 1:30 in the morning. If you want to check that out, or if you're even still up at that time and out there in New York, just giving a little quick recap of the things that were mentioned and my first impressions of the thing. So today, day two was all about virtue, and they started off with Pastor Ed Newton. He is a huge church pastor out, and I believe he said it was Texas area. I could be completely wrong. However, it was all about why not you. So his idea was that we have these natural triggers in our lives that cause us to perceive things in a way that is not biblical, and that we can sometimes base our ideologies on our feelings. And we don't want to do that in a sense because our feelings are the things that can deceive us. Our feelings are a gift from God, but Satan can use those when they are misinterpreted, our feelings, when they're misinterpreted to create strife and create division. He had this one cool story that he shared about how when he went to Michigan, he was walking through and there was this place called Ed's Oil Change and Services. And the pastor, his name was Ed. And so whenever he saw that, it was like a reminder for him. And the slogan of that oil place was New Year, New Oil. And for him, because his name was Ed, it resonated with him that when he entered a new season, it's a new oil, it's a new refreshing that we need to have in Christ. Our next one was Dr. Rudy Whitefield, or Whitefelt or something. I can't really pronounce his last name, but this is Ruslan's psychologist. It's his personal therapist. And this one was all about understanding emotions. And the mastering of your emotions helps grow your faith. And in order to share your faith, you need to understand your emotions. Talked all about the different types of chemicals in our brains that cause us to move toward one specific thing or another. Like if you find dopamine in candy, you're going to eventually find yourself eating more candy and then in turn turning around and having less and less dopamine as you go. And eventually it just becomes a crutch that you have to have. Again, he continued to talk about misused emotions and how those can eventually lead to sin when they're improperly used. But when emotions are properly used, it leads to grace. Hi Shay, I see ya. Welcome. I'm glad you hopped on. Our next one was with Trizzleman Fitness and Ruslan. Trizzleman, he's a YouTuber where he specifically focuses in on fitness, staying fit, and how you can keep God in the middle of that. So this was about mental health and your physical health, and so this kind of took a turn a little bit because this was a discussion that Ruslan and Trizzle were doing together, and it ended up moving into food and how Ruslan has struggled with food, and so has Trizzle with their idea that food was a reward for them, that they would do something and then reward themselves with that. They turned this into a Q&A. They pulled back in Pastor Ed and Dr. Rudy, and they turned this into just an open Q&A discussion where people could come out and ask different questions. And I don't really have anything much to say about that, except for a couple different quotes that I had taken from that. For one, this one came from Pastor Ed. Sometimes we have a numerical metric so that we look good. for example, his numerical metric was the number of people in his church. And continue on, that is the motivation. I feel fake and unqualified, and we turn to people for gratification. And Ruslan came and he continued on that and said, the numbers are vanity, and we are called to be faithful with what we have. And so that was a reminder to me, specifically with doing this. The last two live streams I have had nobody on. Again, I know it's 1:30 in the morning, but this is an opportunity that I have to be able to share. And so I need to be faithful with what I have and not find vanity in the numbers that I'm reaching. Dr. Ed also continued to, he said quote, "It's okay to not be okay. It's not okay to stay that way." And I thought that was pretty impactful as well. I don't really have any extra stuff to speak about for that one. After that, we had our lunch break, got some amazing tacos. They were great. They were made with pork belly. We then came back after our lunch break, and we had this open kind of mic situation where we got to share the things that were the most impactful to us. And this one kid, he stepped up and he shared the quote. I can't remember who it was from. I think it was the Preston Perry one from our day one. And it's, to be 99% known is to be unknown. So as a pastor or somebody, if I am curating a version of myself and hiding part of me behind a wall that nobody ever gets to see, that I've created this perfect image of who I am, and then I go out and I speak, that's hypocritical. I'm not actually letting myself be known to others. And so after this, we turned into our breakout sessions. I think this was probably 3:00 California time. So the breakout sessions, you had two different paths that you could end up going into. They were focused in around a relationship, and then there's kind of like a leadership side. I kind of bumped between different ones wherever I felt and saw fit. The first one, our first breakout session, was marriage is the bedrock. I don't really have anything much to say about that, just a bunch of notes for me personally. The next one that I went to was with Alan and Jen Parr. They are a huge YouTube married couple where they have what's the name of their YouTube? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Alan and Jen Parr, you can search them up, and they give insights on being married and the different things that they've had to work through. And this was not just specifically for married people. This was also for people in their season of singleness, which kind of fit me more than the idea of being married, since I'm not married. But they had 5 different steps, and I'm just going to mention them real quick, that you have to have in order to have any form of positive relationship, whether or not it is an intimate one. And the first step is you have to have honesty, integrity. 2, you have to have self-control. 3, you have to have healthy communication. And 4, you must have a spirit-filled interaction with them. And 5, the most important, is you have to have forgiveness, just as Christ has forgiven you. The next breakout session, it keeps going. This has been a very long day. Nate Sala, I have talked to him a couple times throughout this event, and it's nice to be able to finally meet some of the people that you watch on YouTube and you spend time learning from in person, to see if the person that you see on the screen really meets the person that you see just in everyday interactions. And I have to say that, yes, it absolutely is. And so I want to promote him because I have found a lot of fruit from his videos. And so I decided to go to him, and his was all about from argument to influence, how you can take having an argument with somebody and influence them to the faith. And he called this the garden path approach, where you find the path where the person that you're talking to, you're not preaching to them or giving them a message. in order to show your point of view. You first have to clarify their claim. So if you're having an argument with somebody, let's say it's theology based, you have to clarify that their claim. He used the example that science has shown that the natural causes explain everything. Now this is an argument that some atheists will use. Unfortunately, this is actually a category issue because science and the natural are different. There's naturalism and then there's science. And so that's a category issue. They're starting their argument on a worldview that is not comparable to the argument that you are trying to make, if that makes sense. And so you have to follow up that and you have to ask, how has science shown that the natural causes explain everything? And he explained that questions formed in this way are sly teachers, and that a good question has the power to unravel false beliefs. And as humans, we tend to have this falsely acquired idea that people are intelligent. We're not. We're flawed. And so people create flawed ideas on a flawed worldview. And so they think that they're intelligent. We think that they're intelligent. And we perceive ourselves to be intelligent. But sometimes we build our worldview on something that's false. He went into a whole bunch of different intricacies on how to go and argue your point. And so he created this in 3 different steps. There's the point that you have to make, there's the big idea, and then there's the question. And so he compared this to Jesus. When we have an argument, we have to learn from the person who had the best way of handling arguments, and that was Jesus. So when Jesus went out on the boat with all of his disciples, and then the storm came, and Jesus fell asleep, and then they got rocked and all. You know the story. Jesus came to them, and he knew the point of why that they were scared. He knew that they were afraid, and he knew that they had no faith. And so the big idea from that was that the disciples, they were afraid, and the second one was that they had no faith. And so then he formulates a question, and those questions are, why are you afraid? Do you have no faith? He already knows the answers to these questions, but he's allowing the other person to respond without having a lecture at them, which is very important because when somebody is not open to having a dialogue or a discussion, or they're ready to receive, it just goes right into deaf ears. And so having a question makes it personal and not an attack on that person. The next session that I went to, this keeps coming and going and going and going, was by Gavin Ortlund. This is handling disagreements. So this is just basically an extension of what Nate Sala was talking about, and how we need to have either more self-control or we need to have more courage. And he compared us to rhinos and hedgehogs. Everyone is either a rhino or everyone is either a hedgehog. When you get into a discussion or a disagreement, when things get heated, people either become a rhino where they attack, and those people need self-control. That's me. I tend to do that a lot. Other people are hedgehogs where they retreat. And in those cases, people need courage in order to stand against those disagreements. And so I can talk about that later in more detail if someone wants to. Then we moved on to Rudy Wetfeld and his wife Lisa, and they talked about the artist Cain and how that they had a personal interaction with them. That was just a cool testimony, not much going on about that. Except for the fact that excess money and power and pleasure and pride and those things, that when you put them above God, they tend to pull us off of the path of true success. So I'm getting a comment here. Are you going to stream the Alex O'Connor? Unfortunately, I cannot. I cannot do that. I think that is actually against the copyright for the Bless God Summit, since they are the ones who are streaming it through the virtual ticket. I think that if you go, it's pretty expensive, but they do have the through the blessgodsummit.com, the virtual tickets are still available. I think you can still purchase them. They might be prorated at this point. I don't know if they're going to release it. I would assume that they are going to, since it's like a huge event. I would assume probably like a 3-day turnaround. I will definitely provide a recap if that's something that you guys would love to hear. All right, so for that was basically all that I had for the day 2 of the Bless God Summit. Again, Farmington, I really thank you for providing me with this opportunity to come all the way out here to California. I'll be back. Have a good night, and God bless you.